I'm Brian Van, sportbiketrackgear.com, and today we're going to break down the Woodcraft Ninja 400 clip-on install on our 2018 STG project bike. Okay, before we jump totally into the install, right, here's our OE clip-ons. They sat on top of the stock triple. Bars are pretty high stock. Why would you want to change this? Why would you want to put these clip-ons on? Woodcraft designed a kit specific for this bike, okay, that would help dial the ergonomics, okay, brings the bars down lower. You can see the cuffs are under the triple tree now. It also moves the bars forward just a little bit, okay? So a better ergonomic position to get into that performance riding body position. It's really important for racetrack or even like canyon carving, going to the dragon, stuff like that. That's why you would need this. Benefits that you pick up. Replaceable bars. You have a crash or a tip over, you bend the bar, you don't have to replace the whole unit. It's not gonna break, they typically just bend. You replace just the bar, it's like 15 bucks, very affordable. You also pick up tons of adjustability. The position you see right now is the highest, right, they can go. It's right up against the bottom of the upper triple clamp. You're able to loosen these and push them down. It's almost a ½ inch. We're going to show you that later in the video, okay? And it's still conflict free, no contact with the OE bodywork. So you can get them even a little bit lower if you want. You're also able to alter bar length a little bit. I've got them out as wide as they can be. You could bring them in a little bit if you prefer that more tucked feeling. You're also able to adjust the sweep, okay? If you want them wider, you can make them a little wider. If you want them more narrow, you can make them a little more narrow. And those are things you cannot do with the OE clip-on. So you can do a ton with the ergonomics of the hand controls by installing these. It's a worthwhile mod for street or track. If you like what you see, you're interested, and you want to install a set of these on your Ninja 400, we're going to show you every step. I'm going to mention right now, this isn't your typical bolt-on super easy mod. You need to take time to mock things up. You need to take time to make some measurements to drill for the switch pods, the throttle pod, to make sure that they're in the right position, okay? So this isn't just a 10-minute mod. If you haven't done this before, I want you to expect to spend a significant amount of time getting this installed and dialed in correctly, because remember, you cannot make mistakes with your hand controls. Your throttle and your brake, those are the two main controls on this motorcycle. You do something, you leave this loose, or you create a situation where the throttle's binding, you can cause an accident. Okay, we're gonna do one side at a time. I'm gonna start over here on the throttle side. Let's get the OE bar end off. Keep your OE clip-ons. Keep all of the hardware too. You never know when you may need that down the road. We're gonna take our throttle assembly off the bike. Split the halves. This one will come off. Let's go ahead and pull our throttle cables. Our throttle tube is probably going to look a little different. That is the 03 to 05 Yamaha R6 throttle tube that we installed. It's a little shorter throw than the factory one. From here, we'll get the brake master cylinder. Those are 5mm. Inverted hex. Now we have a bolt right here on the top that connects the clip-on itself to the top triple. It's 5mm internal hex. And then the one that holds it to the fork tube, that is a 6mm internal hex. You see, taking the factory one off, really not very difficult at all. Okay, the Woodcraft clip-on cuffs are modular, okay? You've got your riser right here that needs to be bolted to the cuff itself. I'm gonna put a little thread locker on each one of these. I'm gonna go ahead and pull the fasteners right now out of both halves of the cuffs. It's gonna allow us to then put it underneath the triple tree. Okay, I'm going to use a little bit of thread locker as I assemble this. Just a little bit of blue here. They also use tapered seat fasteners. These are really nice because you've got a lot of surface area, and with all that surface area you get that mechanical grip too. You might almost say that the thread locker is a little overkill, but you know, with these there's no reason for these to really come apart again, so we may as well make sure that the connections are all secure. I will not be using a torque wrench in this video. I typically do not. If that's something that you prefer to do, now would be the time. You can see how I'm taking multiple passes, okay, to ensure that they're tight and the torque is even. The first thing I want to check is this bracket right here that, you know, actually helps hold the brake line, throttle cables, and the wiring harness, you know, all together. I want to see if there's any conflict with the cuff, because the cuff is going to go under now. And you can clearly see right there that there is. Okay, so I'm going to need to remove that bracket. That is fastened to the bottom of the upper triple using a 5mm internal hex fastener. So I'm going to use a Allen wrench to get after that, right there. Okay, that really opens the space up here quite a bit. Now we've got the cuff. It's important to note too, look at the angle, right? They have to be down, right? High here, low here. So you want to make sure when you install the cuffs that you're doing that appropriately. Let's go ahead and slide that into position. Just kind of hold it there. I've got all the fasteners in my hand. I will not use, and I typically do not use, any thread locker on these cuff fasteners. Kind of get them all started. Rotate it around. Real high quality hardware always from Woodcraft. That's something they've always done a great job with. Okay. Now the gap. I want to try and make sure that the gap between the clip-on cuff halves is equal. Okay. These fasteners right here, I'm going to have a difficult time reaching these. So most of the final torque is applied to the fasteners that you can reach, which on this bike, the Ninja, they're going to be the ones here on the outside. So kind of keep adjusting that until it looks like we've got it at a spot where it's going to be nice and even. We'll bring it all the way up against the bottom of that upper triple. Just going to begin to run them down. Not really going to put any torque to them right now. Just get them seated. You can see it with almost no torque, that clamping force. It's just really strong. This is a good opportunity here to put just a little bit of torque to the ones you can't reach to get them even. Okay, right there. Grab one of the bars. Like so. Okay, now before I go too much farther, I have a little tension on the cuff. I've slid a bar inside, and I put just a little torque to the fastener to hold it in place, and I've also pushed the cuff down as far as I could. I want to get a good opening angle, something that's relatively similar to the stock. So by pushing the cuff down as far as I could, it's going to allow me to drop that OE bar back into its position. I'm sight lining right now the hole that's used to bolt it to the top triple to keep it straight. And by doing that, it's going to really mimic that OE position. Now I'm going to rotate the cuff, and I'm once again sight lining this bar to this one to just get that opening angle, something that's pretty close to stock. Okay, and that looks pretty much bang on right there. Okay, once I've established that, I'm going to take and just kind of hold the controls here. I'm going to rotate to the steering stops and see what my clearance looks like. Okay, and that looks conflict-free at this point. Now I want to be able to recall this position very easily, okay, without having to go through too many steps. So what I like to do is I'll take a self-centering punch and I'll make a mark on the upper triple where one of the slots for the cuff is. The two halves come together. And this is not an exact science, but this gets you really close, and if you do any service, it makes getting the bars back in that same position really easy. Okay, small mark you could cover with a Sharpie, nobody's going to notice that. Okay, so I've made that locator mark, and that's just a nice little reference. It's going to help me anytime I need to be able to get back to center, you know, that OE-like angle. Now we're ready to go ahead and torque the cuffs. You can see I loosened the fasteners that are easier to reach. They're on the outside. You just want to come back to these in here. I'm raising the cuff all the way against the bottom of this upper triple. And with these, really, I just want to make sure they're even more than anything. Okay, they look good. Turn it back. There's my mark. Gaps look good. And now we can torque down the cuff. A lot of clamping force here, a lot of surface area too, so you don't want to over tighten this and, you know, possibly collapse the fork tube, stuff like that. So be careful here. The instructions that are included, pay attention to those. If torque values are noted and you prefer to use a torque wrench, now would be a great time to do that. I like to finish the torque here with this T-handle because it just really, I get a lot more feel with this. I'm just working back and forth until they both feel even. Okay, find a drill bit that is pretty much right on that factory sized hole, okay, and that is for the throttle assembly locator button, okay, that keeps it from rotating. So you definitely want to drill these really important steps. So find the bit that is going to fit closest. And get your drill ready. Now we need to determine where do we drill the bar. Let's have a look at the bar length compared to stock. Let's see where the position of the hole is. Well, the position of the hole on the factory bar, it's right about there. I've got the Woodcraft bar in now. Okay, bar end's hanging out here. We're going to be a little longer than stock, not tremendously, and I've got it slid in through the cuff right to the start of that bar end they put in there. Okay, so to make it even on each side, you want to, have reference points like that. So I'm going to measure now from this weld to here, and then we will measure and drill on the clip-on tube that same distance. Okay, now we're to a point where we need to prepare the bar to be drilled so the tab on the throttle housing is able to drop in it, and that prevents the throttle from twisting on the bar. Super important. If you look at your OE clip-on, you're going to see there's a hole there. The bit I've got, I think this is a 3/32. Honestly, I can't read the size on it now, but you can see it's right on that stock size. Okay, so that's the bit I'm going to use. Now, how are we going to determine where to drill this? Okay, instead of just using the OE clip-on and trying to get it in the same spot, and I don't want to do that. I want to have some flexibility in the way I set these bars up now. Okay, so I can really dial the ergos in. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to set the bar at what would be max length. For me, that's determined by sliding the bar all the way out until you no longer see the bar itself. All that's protruding is that bar end plug that Woodcraft puts in there. Put a little torque on it just to hold it in place now. From here, we'll start to install the controls, just mocking everything up. Like anything else, measure twice, drill once. Okay, so we got the brake master installed. Now you got to think about things like how much you're going to want to rotate that to get your angle. Okay, and if you have it super close to the clip-on cuff, you can see, well, I'm restricted there. Okay, still have the brake switch in place. Okay, so got that to contend with. Now we'll take our throttle and we'll just start kind of mocking this up. It's going to be just on here loosely. You won't be able to bolt it all down, but it's really going to help you determine the area that you have to work with. Okay, throttle cable in there. It's pretty tedious stuff, and even though this set of clip-ons is designed for this bike directly, it doesn't mean that they just jump on the motorcycle. Okay, there is actual work and measuring involved in getting this done and getting it done correctly. And I can't stress enough how important it is with your hand control, especially your brakes and your throttle, that no mistakes are made. Okay, get that cable in there. Now, get the other half. Try and just loosely slide that over. And like I said, that button's going to prevent us from tightening it up all the way, but we'll be able to get far enough with it. To set this up nicely. So I'm just going to loosely put the screws in. Well, clearly we can't have the throttle hanging all the way off the clip-on. That's no good. What I'll usually do is I like to be right at about that bar end. Okay, right there, a little gap there. And then the brake, got plenty of clearance here with that brake that's going to allow us to rotate the master, change the angle of the lever, which is, I think, a big positive. So I like this right here. That's how I'm going to set this bar up. I'm going to build it with the throttle tube being right here, just before the bar end that Woodcraft has in there. So now we need to find the distance from here to that tab that's on the 1/2 of the throttle housing. Once we do that, we'll know where to drill. Okay, the measurement I came up with was the entire length, honestly, of this steel rule that I have. I'm going to start off with a self-centering punch. And I'm going to drill straight down. The reason behind that is I can rotate the bar clearly by loosening that fastener. It's just a lot easier to drill and get a nice result when you're straight down. Okay, now once you've done that, go ahead and loosen the bar. Rotate it. It's right there, so there's a little bit of drag on it. Get our throttle tube, make sure the bar is clean, no shavings, nothing. It's lubricated already because there was some grease on the inside of this throttle tube. That's important. You want your throttle tube to move super easy, just like you see there right now. Let's go ahead and grab the halves of the throttle and Bring the cables around. Drop the tube in there. Cable onto the proper slot. Okay, other cable. Like so. And we'll get the other half. I'm kind of holding that all together. The other half, drop it over. And let's find the right there. If you've done everything right, you should be able to get the two halves, pretty much compressed together. Only hand pressure. Okay, if you try to tighten that down, any one of these screws, and that tab is not in the hole all the way, you risk cracking the throttle housing, so you don't want to do that. We can go ahead and torque this now. This is basically fixed. You see, that's right to the end, right to that bar end, so that's where I wanted it. It's going to allow me to have maximum bar length, okay? Let's go ahead and get that brake slid over. Woodcraft has options available too, and we're going to show you that as we get through the first part of the install. I'll show you the installation of the extended length bar with their handguard on the brake side, and you can do that on the clutch side too if you choose to. For the brake master, let's go ahead and I'm going to try and find your best position, right? What works best for you. When I set my bikes up, what I like to be able to do is I like to have the brake lever and the master in as far as possible, so when I'm two-finger braking, that I'm grabbing it as far out as possible. That's more leverage, more mechanical advantage, so less pressure I have to put with my fingers in order to get the braking result that I want. So let's find that sweet spot too for the angle, and you can see these clip-ons really help there too, so that's pretty sweet. Okay, and now let's take a look at throttle, starter button, any conflicts here with the brake master. Okay, and once kind of got that all situated, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to slide the brake master over and torque that clip-on tube. Okay. The master cylinder, when you have it slid in as far as I wanted to slide it in, it covers that bolt, so I needed to torque that before I did this. Now we can go ahead and kind of dial in and put a little angle to that brake lever, kind of dig that. A lot of trial and error here too. We're going to set this up, see how we like it. Make sure there's no conflicts, clearance issues, binding, all kinds of stuff that has to happen. Clip-ons, this is not one of those direct, super simple bolt-ons. This is something that's going to take some time and effort to get that perfect result. With the brake master, you torque the upper bolt down first. You apply all the tension with the lower. Like so. Okay, now let's take a look at this area right here where the brake line, throttle cables, and the harness that go to the kill switch and the starter button. That stuff all looks pretty good. And I don't know that I even really feel the need to make any changes there. There's no restrictions, no binding, so honestly I'm going to just leave that bracket off. I think we'll be good to go like that. Ergonomics, dialing them in. You know, we've shown you that, you know, you can now rotate the master, which is nice. We're able to alter the bar length a little bit, okay? You can take and loosen the bolts on the cuff, get your bars out wider, bring them a little tighter, if that's what you want to do. And it also looks like I would be able to lower these a little bit more than they are currently. The only restriction there would be if, you know, when we come in contact with that upper triple, this can only drop down so far. I think it's roughly, probably, I don't know, it's maybe like a 1/4 inch-ish, okay? So you could drop just a tiny little bit more if you choose to. So I may as well just show you right there what is the max that would be available if that's something you're interested in. Not touching the bodywork. So realistically, as long as we don't run into anything out of the ordinary on the clutch side, which I don't anticipate, that would be your lowest point. So lots of ergonomic options and choices here. It's really important to note, I'm going to say this multiple times in the video, before you ride this bike at all, I want you to go over every single fastener and double check everything. The last thing you want to do is have one of the controls come loose while you ride the bike. Okay, we've got the throttle side out of the way, and that's always the toughest one. So now we're going to jump into clutch side. Loosen up our clutch perch. That's 10 mil. Don't need to take the bolt out, just loosen it up. The switch pod is held on essentially the same way the throttle housing is. We've got 2 Phillips screws. If you're doing a race bike, this is something you may not be putting this back on, okay? All right, like so. I'll let the switch pod hang. And now we will remove the clip-on itself from the motorcycle. Got our 6 here. We installed a set of these on the R3 a couple of weeks back. And my son has ridden it on the racetrack both ways, with the stock bars and then with the Woodcraft clip-ons. And I gotta tell you, that made a tremendous difference installing those. You know, really illustrated how difficult it is on these lightweight bikes to get into proper body position, especially on the track with those OE bars. Now we're going to go ahead and slide this side. There's a little ring of grip glue here. All right, like so. Okay, like the other side, I prepped all these with some thread locker. I've got the halves of the clip-on cuff split. So I can get them on the bike, all bolted down. Now we'll do the same thing that we did on the other side. Got to find that starting point, right? I do have a Motion Pro clip-on alignment tool I like to use as well. Great way to verify the angle side to side. If you don't have that, or that's not something you're interested in purchasing, this is a great way to do it here too. So same thing I did on the other side. I'm just gonna, I lowered the cuff as much as I could in that, the restriction being the upper triple. Okay, that's gonna allow me to set that on there. We'll grab a bar, snug it up just a little bit. Put the cuff down as far as I can. Slip that over. Sight line there. Okay, that looks pretty close. Take a minute and I'll kind of compare the orientation between the two sides. Okay, we've already established, you know, the angle with this one, so just compare the position of the clip-on cuffs in relationship to that upper triple on the motorcycle before we make any marks on the triple for the clip-on half split. Okay, so while I was working on establishing the angle for the clutch side, I had an idea. I was looking down through the hole here, the fastener that attaches the OEM clip-on to the upper triple, and there's a sight line through that hole right down to the 2 fasteners for the inside of that clip-on cuff, and you can see that gap, okay, between. I found a screwdriver that fits in there really snug. So what I'm going to do is kind of use that. You can see now that's definitely tighter than the other side. Push that down in there. So touching. And back it away just a little bit. So it's just like the other side. So that's kind of another option you could use. You know, once you get that baseline established, that is a great place to start, because you can get back to center so easily. So I'm going to do that and then take the center punch and make them up. Okay, once I've got that, pull the cuff up so it's against the bottom of that upper triple. Put just a tiny little bit of torque. I'll have to hold it, and we'll sweep the bars, see if we have any issues. Okay, swept the bars, no conflicts, no issues. Go ahead and put just a little more torque to this now. And then we can finish building out the controls on the clutch side here. We're going to drill for the switch pod. Okay, if you have a race bike, it's probably something you won't need to do. And this length here is going to be dependent, right? Location is going to be dependent upon grip installation, you know, and where do you want your clutch, all those things. Okay, now it's time to start mocking up the controls on this side, okay? Again, I've got the bar loose, as you can see. Slide the clutch perch through there. Slide that all the way down, right there. Gotta get the bar in the same position lengthwise as we have on the brake side. Okay, clutch perch. Now we need to find the distance from here to there to drill for the switch pod. And if you have a race bike and you're not installing this part of the video is completely irrelevant to what you're doing. It's kind of, okay, the tab is in a more central spot here as compared to the other side. Grip to be on the same number as the other side. You need to be right about there. Okay, and then the switch pod. So what we're going to do is we're going to measure from right here, okay, which is the beginning of the pod, because the grip essentially it's going to touch that, right, to the middle of that button. And that's going to come in at about 25 millimeters. So that'd be the center point of the hole. Before we do anything, once again, let's just kind of slide stuff together and just have a look again. Let's take a look at our clutch. Where do we want to position that perch? So on and so forth. We're going to measure twice and drill once. Grab the grip again. Kind of stack everything up. So we're about there. All right, okay. Yeah, we're all good to go there. Zero conflicts. So from the end of the grip, plus 25 is where we're going to make that center punch. Get everything together. Okay, grip. Hold that right there. Like so. Ready to drill. Okay, now we'll loosen the bar enough so we can rotate it, like so. Slide that pot up on here. Okay, that to drop in there. Put the screws back in it. Just both the same length. And you can torque this down all the way now. Okay, switch pod is all torqued up. Now what I want to do is I want to get it located, rotated in a good position. Okay, and remember we got to take into account too our clutch perch, clearances there, clearances of the wiring harness, so on and so forth. You know, and try and have an angle for the switch pod that mimics what we see over here. I feel pretty good about that. We can always, of course, come back and dial this in a little bit more later. It's a good place to start. Okay. Now the clutch perch. Just kind of compare this to the other side. I'll get a similar angle on the bar. Relationship between the lever and the bar, and then we'll snug this up a little bit. You know, once again, I really, especially with a clutch, man, I like to get that thing as far inboard as possible. And the reason behind that is more leverage. The more leverage you have, the easier it is to pull that clutch lever. Less effort. About there. That's where I'm going to go. Okay, we are all buttoned up. Before you take the bike out, I want you to go through every fastener that you touched and make sure they're tight. It's super important. The controls, you can't make mistakes here. After you ride the bike for the first time, I would also suggest going back over the fasteners and see if any of them have worked loose. Sometimes as you use it at first, things change a little bit, okay? So just double check. Controls always have to be tight and right. You can see the difference, and we'll have a still picture. We had the video as well. We left the one clip-on OE over here and had this one in its position all the way at the top, and then we lowered it as far as we could to really show you the span that's available in terms of adjustability. Okay, I think it's important to be able to see that. I didn't have any clearance issues when I was at the lowest point. I don't have any at the highest point. Before you ride the bike, obviously, sweep the controls over and over, make sure everything is conflict free. You don't have any contact anywhere, any issues created. The biggest things being your brake and of course your throttle. Okay, double check your throttle return in a center position as well as at both stops. Make sure it's perfect, okay? Who is this mod right for? Is this a race only mod? No, I would say it's not. You know, I think with this motorcycle, once you really start to get up to pace, if you find the ergos are just a little too comfortable and you're having a hard time getting into a good body position, say you're Canyon Carbon or going to the Dragon or something like that, even not on the track yet. With the OE bars, you're gonna find it difficult to get into that real performance-oriented position. So this is for the racetrack, must have. For the street, once your riding gets to a certain level, I think this is gonna be valuable for most any other rider out there. It's also important to note that there are options available with this. You can order this with a longer bar on one or both sides, okay, and use their Woodcraft handguard on the brake or clutch, or of course both sides as a set. And that's a nice option for track riders for sure. It can help protect your pinky in a crash, and it prevents that accidental brake lever contact that can send you crashing instantly. It's no funds required in racing at this point too. The AMA, you'll see that everybody's out there riding in that in Moto America. So there you have it. Here is our Woodcraft clip-on install on our 2018 Kawasaki Ninja 400 STG project bike.